let's talk a little bit more about this, Alexander, and let's talk about NATO expansion in Slovakia in specific. Before we get into that, I just want to remind everybody to, if you're watching this on Rumble, you'll find the button for Locals up top. Locals is integrated into Rumble. So if you're watching this on Rumble, on the Rumble platform, just click on that reddish maroon button that says Locals. Click on there and you'll be part of our Locals community where we have all kinds of great content on that community. All you have to do is click that button and you're in the Duran Locals community. Alexander, the U.S., they need this provocation to bear fruit to force Russia to do something against Ukraine, because their ideal scenario is for the cancellation of Nord Stream 2, but more importantly, well, not only, also importantly, is to have the German public, the German citizens, to believe that that cancellation of Nord Stream 2 was not at the hands of the United States. It's at the hands of the evil, bad Putin and the evil, bad Russians, because they invaded Ukraine. If they don't get that, then the German citizens are going to say, well, our energy costs are going through the roof. We had Nord Stream 2 canceled. The business sector is going to say we had to cancel Nord Stream 2 because the U.S. put sanctions on us, because NATO continues to expand, and Russia didn't do anything in order for this pipeline to be canceled. This is the game that we have unfolding. In the meantime, NATO continues to expand.
Yes.
So in parallel with this Nord Stream 2 game that's playing out, one benefactor to all of this is NATO, is the institution of NATO, because they have a renewed purpose, and we have the news that they are actually going to be in control of military bases in Slovakia, specifically of an airfield, of an airbase, which I guess pretty much means that the U.S. can set up shop right in Slovakia, and if need be, they can, from a military standpoint, they could do all kinds of damage if they want to, in and around Eastern Europe or Ukraine. I mean, people in Slovakia are not happy about this, but one of the benefactors to all of this that's going on is NATO. I mean, NATO has got a purpose again.
Well, it has a kind of a purpose, because what it's doing is, of course, it's got the Russians now saying that all your infrastructure in Eastern Europe that you created after 1997 needs to be dismantled. So the NATO bureaucracy is responding to that by creating more infrastructure in Eastern Europe. You can see that kind of frenetic desire to create what is sometimes called facts on the ground, and again, it's part of this needling of the Russians, attempts to provoke them by building more infrastructure in Slovakia. Now, to be very clear about this, it's not going to change anything. It's not going to affect the military balance. But it is deeply provocative at this time. And that is what it is meant to be. It's meant to be provocative to the Russians. It's a way of showing two fingers at them. Even in the middle of all these negotiations, they're trying to create this, they're trying to intensify crisis, the sense of crisis in Europe, by installing these bases. There was a very interesting article in The Guardian, of all places, in Britain, by somebody who's a conflicts negotiator, mediator. And he pointed out that, if you really are involved in a conflict, then all the things that the West has been doing, threatening sanctions, increasing threats, pushing troops forward, planting air bases in places like Slovakia, it's not the way to calm the situation, it's the way to aggravate it. And that, of course, is exactly what they're trying to do. But, of course, it has another side effect, because it means that people in Slovakia suddenly feel that they're on the front line. Now, Slovakia is a complicated country. There's obviously pro-Western and less pro-Western people there, and it's played out in all kinds of ways. And there's been times since the end of the Cold War when Slovakia has been very friendly to Russia, other times when it's been less so. But this is the first time when they feel that they're being pushed into a kind of front line in a conflict with the Russians. And it's provoking a reaction because, of course, many people in Slovakia don't want to be put in a front line in a confrontation with the Russians. We've seen that playing out now in Bulgaria. We've seen it playing out in Croatia. I understand there's growing unrest and unhappiness about this in the Czech Republic too. And now, of course, planting this military base or this air base in Slovakia at precisely this moment is, well, it's annoying the Russians to some extent, though the Russians are not going to let themselves be provoked by something like this. But it is causing real ructions in Slovakia, and it's leading to protests within the Slovak parliament and demonstrations there and all sorts of things like that now.
Yeah, I mean, there's a video that's going around, and I'll try to find a link for that video and put it in the description box down below, where you have the parliament in Slovakia in session, and I guess some of the MPs are protesting the fact that their country is now on the front line, whether you like it or
Absolutely.
not. Your country is now a target. It is on the front line of this move towards some sort of conflict, and as they're making their point that they don't want their country to be on the front line of this, I guess two MPs pull out a flag of Ukraine in the middle of the parliament session in Slovakia, and they hold up that flag of Ukraine. And what came to my mind is, Ukraine is being used to not only to drive up the war machine and the push towards conflict. It's being used to give NATO a purpose, but it's also now being used to tear Slovakia apart as well. I mean, this is, they're using this narrative to really pick apart Europe and to turn Europe into some sort of,
Well, indeed.
not only now an EU protectorate, but a NATO military protectorate as well.
Absolutely. I thought that was an extraordinarily provocative thing to do, by the way. I mean, it was Slovak MPs waving Ukrainian flags in the national parliament. I mean, many Slovaks must be looking at that and must be shaking their heads and must be extremely upset and angry about this. By the way, there's been an opinion poll done in some of Europe's leading countries, and it was done by a European think tank, very pro-NATO think tank. I'm very sceptical about some of the methodology of the opinion poll, and the sample size was very small. It was about 5,000 people across a large number of countries within the EU, I should stress. But what it did show is very strong opposition, or at least very, perhaps I should correct that, very slight support in Germany, in France, in Finland. Remember Finland, all the talk about Finland joining NATO. Very slight support in these countries for this policy of confrontation with Russia. People are not prepared from these countries, Germany, France, Finland, wherever, to go and fight the Russians, and they are not even prepared to accept higher energy bills, in the event of a confrontation with the Russians, and they're not interested and they're not sympathetic to this Ukrainian situation at all. And if anything, I think this opinion poll was skewed to make it look like there was more support for the Western and NATO position than there really was. The only place where supposedly there is support for this policy of confrontation is Poland. And while I believe that to be true, I believe that there's an awful lot more disquiet in Poland as well than this opinion poll shows. Well, these moves, waving Ukrainian flags in people's parliaments, are going to make people even more concerned and even more angry, because they must be asking, well, who are our leaders concerned about? Are they concerned about us, or are they concerned about Ukraine? And I think that is never a good call for a political class to have.
Yeah, well, just to wrap up the video, if in a best case scenario, Nord Stream 2 is canceled and you have no conflict, Europe is going to suffer because their energy bills are going to go way through the roof. So, and I'm saying that's the way we're heading, that could be a best case scenario. Nord Stream 2 somehow gets canceled, but no conflict happens. Okay. But Europeans are going to pay a lot of money in energy.
Well,
Okay,
they are.
they suffer. But real quick, the worst case scenario, Putin pretty much explained it to Macron. I mean, he said it. The worst case scenario is eventually we're at war. I mean, he said
Yeah,
it. He
absolutely.
didn't say the word
Absolutely.
war. It's been misconstrued, but he
Yeah,
said,
no, no.
do you want us to have a conflict? We don't want that.
Well, exactly.
And when Putin says that, when he says that to Macron, now he's saying that, Russia, if there's going to be a conflict with the NATO, then, well, who are the countries that are on the front line? Who are the countries with all the weapons? Poland, Romania, and now Slovakia.
Yeah. Well, indeed, absolutely correct. I mean, to be very clear, what Putin said was that it is incredibly dangerous to allow Ukraine to enter NATO, because if you do that, you are setting the scene for a potential conflict between Russia and NATO. And the unspoken word there is that Russia will not therefore permit Ukraine to join NATO, because it would be too dangerous, both for Russia and for peace in Europe, to allow that to happen. It might even escalate to the point of nuclear conflict. So then the Russians are not going to let that happen. So the point is, if there's a conflict in Eastern Europe, in Eastern Ukraine, going a step down, the absolute worst case scenario, war between NATO and Russia. I mean, it doesn't even bear thinking about. I mean, if there was a conflict like that, the best outcome would be a comprehensive NATO defeat in Eastern Europe, which would be a disaster. And it would not be good for Russia either, by the way, for all kinds of reasons. Or alternatively, a nuclear war, which, I mean, I don't even want to go there. I mean, the thought of that just makes my blood freeze. But that's the absolute worst case scenario. Less bad scenario, war between Ukraine and Russia. Russia wins, Ukraine is destroyed, Russia gets Ukraine, but there's a massive crisis in Europe. Europeans obviously lose Nord Stream 2. Europeans lose all kinds of contacts with Russia. There's massive disruption in the European economy. Things go downhill for Europe, but it becomes more dependent on the United States. US wins after a fashion. Still have a bad effect on the US, but it would at least gain something. Europe would very, very badly lose. Less bad scenario. There's no outright war between Russia and Ukraine. Nord Stream 2, however, is cancelled. European economy goes from bad to worse. It loses Russian gas. Because, to be very clear, all the other gas pipelines, they're going to start shutting down as Russian gas starts flowing eastward to China. So gas costs, energy costs in Europe explode. European economy becomes increasingly uncompetitive. Germany, which is already facing major structural problems, goes into decline. Europe goes into decline. The United States is also affected, but it's a big continental economy. It comes through. That's the least bad scenario. Very bad for Europe, better for the US, perhaps will eventually create a crisis in Europe. By the way, it could undermine the Eurozone. That's a big story. We will have to come to that. In any of these scenarios, how does Slovakia benefit? How do these frontline states look better? It seems to me that they are the big losers, almost irrespective of what happens now.
Yeah.
Either,
I mean, listening to you, it just seems
Yeah.
the European people are going to be the
Yeah.
losers no matter what.
absolutely, absolutely. But I mean, big countries like Germany, France, Britain, they'll manage to get by. But Slovakia, Czech Republic, Bulgaria, all of them, I mean, the future looks for them increasingly grim. And as I said, there'll be a front line in a new Cold War between the West and the Chinese-Russian colossus. Their economies are going to be suffocated. It doesn't look like a good outcome for them, however this turns out.
All right, well, let's hope that Macron. I
Well,
can't
pulls
believe
it
I'm saying
off.
it. Let's hope that
I
Macron
know, I
comes
know, I
through.
know, I know.
Let's hope
I
that
know.
Macron comes through.
Well, I know. I mean, Macron and Schultz and all these people, they're trying desperate. I mean, Schultz said that he believes that there will be a diplomatic solution. I mean, the Germans and the French want to see that. I mean, the best outcome, the optimal outcome, all this ends, Nord Stream 2 is built, things return to normal. I mean, even then, to be very clear, a lot of damage has been done. And if that scenario were to unfold, the confidence in the US, in the big capitals in Europe, in Paris and Berlin and Rome, has been massively shaken.
In that scenario, the Biden White House takes a big hit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they're going to work overtime. They're going to work overtime to try to prevent it working out. So, as I said, we're in a very tense situation. Next couple of months in Europe are going to be very difficult.
All right, let's leave it there. If you're watching this on Rumble, just click that button on top, which says locals, that little red maroon button. It'll take you to our locals community page. You'll get all kinds of great news stories, posts, videos, all kinds of great content on our locals community. That is, if you're watching this from Rumble, just look up top and click that button. It's fully integrated. So all you have to do is click on that button and you're in our community, and we will welcome you in our community with open arms. We'll be very happy to see everybody there. Go to the Duran shop, 10% off. Use the code GOODDAY.
Good day. And you can see my amazing new bomber jacket. There's amazing things in the shop now.
That bomber jacket is coming soon. It'll be up very, very soon. So keep your eye out for it. All right. Take care, everybody.